Hello, welcome back. If you're new, I'm Aiden and I'm an audio engineer. Slightly different setup for me, just some construction going on in here. But anyway, if you are a regular in the production or engineering space, then you've probably seen that recently Universal Audio updated their line of Apollo interfaces. They refreshed every unit that's currently available, and they added a couple new things as well. But there's one unit that they left out of that refresh, and that's the Apollo Solo. That's the cheapest, least powerful, I suppose, interface in that line. But it itself is relatively recent compared to the Apollo X line that just got refreshed, because they had the UA Aero and then made the Solo. And so with it seemingly kind of being not necessarily left behind but left out, I kind of want to explore maybe its worth in the current year. I recently just bought one, and that sounds ridiculous if you know me and the caliber of studio and stuff that I do. And even if you're not aware, you can just kind of see some of the gear that I've gotten here and you think, whoa, that's all running on an Apollo Solo? God, no. My main interface is an Orion 32, but I did recently buy an Apollo Solo. And so I kind of want to talk about that and where I think its place is in 2025. So some context to why I bought it. I'm mainly a mix engineer and a producer. I've just recently, the past couple of years, gotten more into the recording side of things. I'm a drummer. I really don't do guitar, and I wanted to kind of have some guitars and amps, cabs, heads available in the studio, but I really just couldn't justify doing that from a monetary standpoint, because I don't play that. Those are not my instruments. I can figure out and learn and talk to people, figure out what to get, but just spending the money and using the floor space in this already limited environment to have that for the off chance that a guitar player comes in here and doesn't already have an amp that they want to bring with them, I just couldn't justify it. So something I did a couple years ago was I got a, what is it, FFR, flat frequency filter, or something like that. One of those guitar cabinets that's really just like a full range speaker inside the cabinet. It's not a guitar cabinet. And so what I did with that was I just DI'd guitar, did an amp sim, and then instead of just playing that through my monitors, I would play it through that cabinet. And so anybody who was really used to playing live or just wanted that feeling of a real cab, real amp in the room, they had that experience. They could feel the wind moving against their back as they played. But I thought it was smart at first. And then after dealing with it for a while, it just seemed so stupid. So I returned it and kind of left that there. I really didn't do anything. My next idea was to just bite the bullet and buy stuff that I would really only ever use for niche projects or have available for clients. But I've now tried something different, and I now really kind of like it. So that's where the Apollo Solo comes in. This is not a full review of the interface. It's just a way that I've added it into my workflow, and I want to share that and see if it helps other people, possibly in a similar situation. So I was in the Apollo ecosystem for quite some time. I got a Twin X Duo 5 years ago, I want to say, but I got that because it was just kind of the thing. My interface for years before that was, it wasn't a Focusrite, surprisingly. It was a Roland Rubix. Yeah, you ever heard of that? Roland makes an interface. It was a Roland Rubix 24 when I first started, and then I got the Roland Rubix 44, I think it's called. But yeah, that's what all my early music was recorded with. And so kind of the interface for any home producer, musician, that kind of thing, was the Apollo. You could get the Scarlett, but I thought I was above that, so I went with the Apollo Twin. I used it. I loved it. I loved it so much that about 2 years ago, I bought an Apollo X8, and you can daisy chain them together. And so now I had 4 unison mic pre's, or is it 6? Does the X8 have 4 or 2? Yeah, it's 4. So I had 6 unison mic pre's, 8 inputs, 8 outputs on general line level, and the ADAT expandability, ADAT in and ADAT out, and that was great for a while. And then I wanted to get more into the analog realm, having real gear, hands-on stuff, and living that life and working that way. And what I could have done is stayed in the Apollo ecosystem. That's probably what I was going to do, buy another X8 or just get an X16. But those are expensive as hell for what they are, and also just in general. And then I went deeper down the rabbit hole, and if you're a bit more advanced in this thing, then you've probably heard people kind of who've been there, done that, bash the Apollo conversion, the AD, DA converters inside the interfaces and say, oh, they're so much better for so much less, or for the same price you can get better, or for just a little bit more you can get so much better, that kind of thing. And that got to me. I was wondering, what if these, I mean, they're not bad. Like I listened to things. I had some hardware with the X8, like it still had 8 in, 8 out, and I didn't hear a problem. There was nothing wrong with it, but still, just psychologically, it got to me. And I am certain that I am not the only victim of that kind of thing, just in general, in this whole thing of people saying, oh my God, this sucks. You've gotta go with this. You've gotta, whatever. I know that is not only a me experience. So I started looking around for other options. So I was going to go with the Lynx Aurora M. Maybe start off with the 8 channel, and it's expandable. You can just buy the cards of I/O. Or I was going to go with some of the RME stuff, the RME, the ADAT box, and then go with like some Ferrofish converters, whatever. But just all of that just seems so ridiculously complicated to me, and I just didn't want to, I mean, it isn't complicated, but I just didn't want to bother with it that much. So what I finally landed on was the Orion, like I mentioned before. That's 32 in, 32 out, analog, and then some digitally. And I could get it for the same price that I bought my X8 for. So I sold my X8, I sold my twin, and I bought the Orion. A note on the conversion talk. I didn't do a direct one-to-one comparison, I'm not gonna lie, but just on the straight in and out for hardware and stuff like that, I don't know, maybe. But on the monitor outputs, yeah, there is a difference. I've read it described as like I took a blanket off my monitors, right, when I switched away from the Apollo stuff to something else. I think that's very drastic, but I can understand the sentiment, and I do agree with it to some extent. So it isn't just people shooting the shit online. There is actual audible, truly audible merit that you don't have to go out of your way to, close your eyes and tap your foot 3 times in order to hear something. It really is there. It was immediately apparent. But that was my experience with the Apollo system. I was in it for a long time, and then I just needed more than I could realistically afford in that system. Over the years, I bought many, many, many plugins, and then they announced that they were going native with a lot of the stuff. They were introducing UAD Spark, introducing UAD X. That was amazing. That is really what allowed me to step away. And I know that that's the opposite of what UA really wanted, but it was a step for me that would make me feel like, oh, I'm making some of this money back on my purchase of the actual hardware, but the software, I mean, that's like, what am I gonna do with that? It's a hardware license, essentially. The interface is like an iLock dongle. What am I gonna do? Them going native with a lot of that stuff, I now have almost every single native plugin that's available at this time. But not everything is native. And some things will never be native on the UAD platform. Some of them, like the AMS ARM-X 16, the reverb, that's not really a UAD plugin. They don't have the final say. Everything from Brainworks, That's already native just through Plugin Alliance. So why are they going to do that natively on the UAD platform? Everything from SoftTube, all those amp sims, all those, everything like that, that's already native on SoftTube. They wouldn't do that. And the licenses for those things don't transfer. You can't just email them and say, hey, I have this auto-tune license. Hey, on the UAD system, hey, Antares, can I transfer that and now get a license for auto-tune, just a straight audio unit download? It doesn't work they're not going to say yes. There are people that have tried. It doesn't happen. And so me still being in that boat, the pain of that is alleviated with how much is native, but not everything. And you can wait it out, and more things have slowly, steadily come through, but it will never be 100%. So that was my dilemma. Two things at one time. I wanted to have fun, not just recording straight dry DI guitars and basses. I wanted to have some fun and track with the real sounds that would possibly be going on the final records that we were working on. And I had all these UAD plugins that I just couldn't use. I had money that I spent that now I'm not getting anything out of that. And I'm not delirious, I'm not an idiot. I'm not gonna say, hey, UAD, give me my money back because I can't use these anymore. I knew what I was buying, and I knew that it was locked to that platform. So that's fine. That's my issue now that I have to deal with. And so something I thought about doing when I sold my Apollo stuff was buying a satellite, because then that's not an interface, that's just the processor cores, so that you can run your UAD plugins on it. I never did that. It wasn't worth the $500-600 that a Thunderbolt 3 satellite, even a quad, used would cost me. So I figured, why don't I kill two birds with one stone? My instrument tracking problem and my UAD plugin problem, and I got an Apollo Solo. That was why I got it. As I've become more versed in the job that I do, and as I have gained more experience and cut my teeth more on the recording side of things, the more importance I now put on the quality of the recordings themselves and not relying so much on myself on the back end to mix it good. A good mix is only going to come from good recording. I knew that and I understood it, but I didn't understand it until I just had enough experience to understand it. As I've gained hardware, I have everything on my desk in front of me is for mixing purposes. Everything over to the right of me is for recording purposes. So as I've recorded, as I've listened and really honed my ear and bettered my studio, bettered my environment, I can hear the quality difference and the ease of getting great results with tracking with the right microphone and the right equipment after the microphone. The UAD system with their Apollos, you can record with plugin emulations of that. And when I first got my Twin, I really didn't understand that. I thought it was cool. It was neat. I could use a $3,000 Neve 1073 and not have to buy a $3,000 Neve 1073 and, an LA2A after it, or an 1176 or a distressor. And I knew what those things were, but I didn't really understand the importance, using them well and making sure that the recording itself essentially was the mix. So the Apollo Solo in 2025, if you are thinking about it or are just wondering about, UA seems to have moved on, so what's next for this thing? I think it is great for what it currently is, even in larger caliber studios such as mine, so you can unlock and have access to the UAD plugins. You only have a single core of the processing power. That's not a lot. I really might get a Thunderbolt satellite sometime in the future, but not yet. It's a want, not a need. But also tracking with the effects. I have great outboard gear that I love. I've spent a lot of money on, so I'm gonna use that. If it's vocals, I have a hardware 73. I have a hardware 76. I don't need the UA emulations, but for things that I don't have that are significantly more difficult to properly have at your disposal, if that makes any kind of sense. The amp simulations in particular are really what I'm talking about, because that is, I think, the biggest use case in my situation. I can get cheap Harley Benton stuff, sure, but the physical space that that's going to take up in the room, I just don't have that right now. Mic and a stand to capture that all, that's just physical space that is boring to talk about. Nobody ever really thinks about it, but it's a real issue. And the return on just my business side of things, I wouldn't see a return on that for a long time, because really I just don't record guitar that much. But still, when I do, I don't want it to be boring. I don't want it to just be a clean DI signal that someone listens back to in their headphones, because they can get that for very, very cheap from a little Focusrite on their desk at home. So that's where I think the Apollo Solo stands in the current time that we're in. If you are brand new to this and you don't have anything, you don't have really a studio, you just got a bedroom or a spare room or something like that, then the Apollo Solo can easily fit all the necessities of a studio centerpiece for you. But even in the larger studios with hardware and I/O galore, with much higher needs than an Apollo Solo can provide, it alone isn't going to get you very far. But in tandem with other things and putting it in your workflow in a smart way, I think that even then it has a great spot that keeps it relevant. So, quick and dirty little story time and opinion piece, I suppose. If you enjoyed this, like, subscribe, really, really does help me. Take a look in the description for links to my studio, my Instagram, stuff like that. I post relatively infrequently, so I won't bother you too much, I hope. But other than that, thank you so much for watching, and let me know what you think. Leave a comment down below. Thank you, and I'll talk to you soon.